All right, y'all, welcome back to day 3 of our trip to Memphis, and we're so excited to wrap things up. We have still the National Civil Rights Museum to go, Sun Records, and what else? There was something else. And I think that's it. Either way, it's been so much fun. It's kind of like dreary and gloomy today, but we're gonna make the best of it. It's not as sunny as it's been. So we are looking forward to it. Please join us on this last and final day of Memphis, and some good stuff yet to come. And the dang Peabody ducks. I knew there was one more thing. Okay, whoa, my hair is pretty windswept. So we're here back at the Lorraine Motel and the National Civil Rights Museum. We walked all the way here. So let's go in and check it out. Alright, so this is the Lorraine Motel. It's actually the site of the assassination of Martin Luther King in 1968. It was essentially kind of preserved the way that it looked on the day that he was killed. And what they've done since is they've built a museum around it, outlining the civil rights movement from the time of slavery to today and then beyond today. And so our visit there was on April 3rd of 2017, which is actually one day before the anniversary of his assassination, and so it was really breathtaking and just awe-inspiring. And so these are the pictures and the things that we learned and are going to share. And so this is an example of how these slaves were in the bottom of the ships, taken and placed for transport in chains to a new country. And this is an example of the slaves out on the selling block, how they would be sold off to the highest bidder. And then this is a display that basically just demonstrates how Black families and lives and community began to grow. Everything had to be separate, so Blacks had to have their own education, their own press, their own arts and entertainment. They had to basically fend for themselves and teach themselves or be taught by willing whites or anybody who was willing to teach them to be able to make their own communities, because they had to be pretty much self-sufficient because they weren't able to use any of the whites' amenities or newspapers. Everything had to be separate in a time of segregation in the past. So not only did things have to be separate, the separation actually had to be so that it became punishable by law if a Black person were to eat at a white restaurant or to use a white bathroom. I mean, that's how specific it was. Something called Jim Crow laws in the South set it up where they can be thrown in jail if they broke these rules. And that's how things like Rosa Parks, for example, which is pictured there, had to sit in the back of the bus. If not, she would go to jail. And on that particular day, that's how, what pushed the civil rights movement forward. She refused to sit at the back of the bus at that particular time. She was tired, and so it was people like her that helped to push civil rights forward. This here's an example of a Freedom Riders bus which was burned, and they were harassed for being able to spread the message of freedom across the nation, and they had to persevere, and a lot of people were hurt during this transition, but these were also people that were fighting for the rights of their peers and their neighborhoods. And you also had lawyers like Thurgood Marshall who were pushing forward with studies which are pictured here, which showed that Black children actually felt that they were inferior to white children and the way that they handled and cared for the dolls. And it was one of the studies that helped to overturn a lot of the segregating legislation. And this brings us to 1968, which in Memphis, Tennessee, there was a sanitation driver strike, which basically occurred as a result of the horrible conditions at which the African American or Black sanitation workers were forced to work in. They had multiple deaths and injuries as a result of poor equipment, and so as a result of that, the workers went on strike. The city of Memphis ended up being heaped in trash, and so they were being forced to go back to work. And so at this point, when you're in trouble in those days, you had to get somebody to stand up for you, and one of the biggest persons, or one of the people that stood up for you, were people like Jesse Jackson and specifically Martin Luther King, who went to Memphis to try to aid in this strike that was going on and try to bring peace and awareness to the conditions that the sanitation workers were in at that time. I just want to say that this is an abbreviated version. There were so many other important civil rights moments in history that occurred prior to this event, but this is basically the culmination of what ended up the last final days of Martin Luther King, basically, which is you know, what we were there. We were at the Lorraine Hotel, and so basically what happened on this fateful night, on April 4th, 1968, was that, and all this we learned while on the tour, mind you, that I was not that educated on my civil rights history as I was walking through this hotel, so it's definitely worth a visit. I mean, just incredible. Anyway, so 1968, April 4th, Martin Luther King goes to give his speech, which is the famous Promised Land speech, which we were able to hear in detail at the museum, and just breathtaking. And so after the speech was done, he went back to his hotel, which is where he was staying. And so while at the hotel, they gathered their things and they were getting ready to go to dinner before he went to another event. And then on that day, he walked out onto his balcony at the hotel and was assassinated right in front of his room in hotel room 306. And it was very unfortunate. And so that is where it occurred. And this is the rooms where they were staying at. They were kind of preserved in the way that they were on that day. And King's entourage at the time was staying on the room with a single bed, and this room, which was 307 and 306. And so the people that were there at the time was someone named Ben Branch and the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and he was shot by James Earl Ray, who was staying in a courtyard across the way with a sniper rifle, and he was shot in the neck, traveled down his spine, and became lodged in his shoulder. And he was at the second floor of the motel standing outside. Apparently his last words, which were really sad, was asking a musician that was there with him to play Take My Hand, Precious Lord, at a meeting that was supposed to be happening that night. I kind of got like the same feeling that I had when I went through the Holocaust, concentration camp. So Corey and I were just saying that it's like super freaking eerie. It's just, you can feel the emotion, and it's just like very solemn and sad and poignant. And to think it used to be such a vibrant hotel that housed tons of musicians and politicians, and in a time of segregation, both black and white. According to the description that was on their placards and information.
A gorgeous museum.
I agree. It also left me with the feeling that I needed to do more in this world, because, you know, so many people gave up their life and their independence for the health and happiness of others, and I don't have to give up as much as they did, but I can definitely give more than I do, and that is what it left me with, and that was a beautiful feeling. So yeah, overall was amazing. I really enjoyed it. A little piece of history. All right, we'll talk to you a little bit.